Hello, everybody. Today we are going to talk about fertilization and pregnancy. So we've learned previously about the reproductive anatomy, and we've learned about some of the hormones and the roles they play. And today we are going to learn about what happens when fertilization does happen, and then what happens after that as a result. So first of all, we need to start in the ovary. So the important step here is the idea of ovulation. So if you remember from what we talked about before, in the ovary, the eggs develop over time, right? So here we have an egg that's developing, and the tissue around the egg is growing. Now that is called a follicle. You see that word in the picture here and here. So the follicle is the egg and the tissue surrounding the egg. And as it develops and it gets ready, the follicle gets larger and larger until something very important happens: ovulation. Now, you should remember from before that ovulation is caused by the hormone LH. Now, ovulation just means, so once we've released LH, remember LH comes from the brain and it tells the ovary for ovulation to happen. The egg is released. So where does the egg go at this point? After it's released from the ovary, the next step is the fallopian tubes. So the egg is going to move through the fallopian tubes where it can potentially be fertilized. And if an egg is going to be fertilized, it's going to happen in the fallopian tubes. It takes a few days to get down there. Now, meanwhile, while the egg is developing and if fertilization has happened in the fallopian tubes, two hormones that you've already learned about, estrogen and progesterone, they're going to be thickening the endometrium. So the endometrium is the inner lining of the uterus. So it's that inner lining. And when we say that it's thickening, we can see here that it's going to get a little bit bigger, and there's going to be blood vessels that grow and deliver blood to the endometrium. And basically what the endometrium is doing is it's preparing itself for fertilization and pregnancy. This happens every month. If it doesn't happen, then everything goes back again. But if fertilization and pregnancy do happen, then the endometrium stays very thick and developed. So if there's no pregnancy, what happens is the estrogen and progesterone levels, they go down. And this is going to cause the uterine lining to shed in a process called menstruation. This won't happen if there is pregnancy. The estrogen and progesterone levels stay up there, they stay high, and the endometrium stays the way that it is. It's developed, it's thick, and it's ready to help protect and prepare the fertilized egg to turn into an embryo and to turn into a fetus. So basically everything that happens with the ovary and with the uterus, it's all guided by hormones. Those four hormones rather that we talked about before, FSH and LH, and estrogen and progesterone, those are going to guide this month-long cycle. So two of these hormones act on the ovary. FSH and LH help develop the follicle and cause ovulation. And then estrogen and progesterone, these are hormones that come from the ovary itself, and they help guide the uterine lining and how it develops. So estrogen and progesterone, their presence is going to cause a thickening of the uterine lining in preparation for pregnancy. So these reproductive cycles with hormones begin at about puberty and last until menopause. They prepare for fertilization and pregnancy, and they are hormonal feedback systems. So remember how we talked about positive feedback and negative feedback the other day? That involves these hormones. All right. So what about the sperm? Well, the sperm is a specialized cell that is going to really be specialized to make its way through the reproductive system and then to fertilize an egg. So in the head, we have the front here. This is actually called the acrosome, and it contains enzymes. And these enzymes are going to help penetrate the egg. Inside the head, behind the acrosome, we have a haploid nucleus, right? So this is a haploid nucleus. This was made through the process of meiosis. And so it's only basically half of a diploid nucleus because it's going to meet up with the haploid nucleus in the egg to form a full diploid nucleus. We have the neck here. The neck has mitochondria. The mitochondria are going to give this cell energy. And the reason why it needs so much energy is because the tail is a flagella and is going to whip back and forth, moving the sperm throughout the female reproductive system. And the flagella is going to guide it to the egg. So we have to have lots of mitochondria because all that movement is going to take a lot of energy. So if a sperm does reach an egg cell in one of the two fallopian tubes, remember that is where fertilization will happen. The head, remember, contains that acrosome that has enzymes. The enzymes will digest the outer layers of the egg, and then the sperm will be able to enter. The haploid nucleus will then enter, and what that's going to do is as soon as that haploid nucleus enters the egg, it's going to cause a chemical reaction in the egg that is going to make this, like all these calcium ions are going to come out, and they are going to prevent any other sperm cell from entering the egg. So only one can enter. Once one does enter, a chemical reaction happens, and the egg sort of sends out all this calcium that prevents anything else from breaking through. And then eventually the haploid nucleus of the sperm and the haploid nucleus of the egg cell are going to meet to make a diploid nucleus. And remember, where is this happening? This is happening in the fallopian tubes. So if the egg is fertilized, it continues to make its way down the fallopian tube. See where my pointer is pointing? Here's fertilization. And then notice the egg is making its way down the fallopian tubes, and notice what's happening. The cell is already starting to divide. It's already starting to undergo mitosis. And by the time this new cell gets to the opening of the uterus, it's already a ball of cells. So it has undergone mitosis a bunch of times, and it is going to embed itself in the lining of the uterus called the endometrium. The endometrium at this point is prepared because the uterus has been signaling it with estrogen and now progesterone that are going to keep that lining very thick, ready to receive the fertilized egg, which is now a ball of cells, and it's going to embed itself into the endometrium where it will develop and grow larger and larger and larger. So pregnancy takes about 9 months. It's divided up into 3-month periods called trimesters. The first trimester basically goes from fertilization to about week 13. The umbilical cord and the placenta start to develop. The embryo has all of its organs and major body parts, and the limb buds develop. So you can see the first trimester here. In the second trimester, which is the next 3 months, the fetus starts to look distinctly human, and we've got a lot of rapid growth. The mother may feel fetal movement at this point. And then the third trimester, the last 3 months, the fetus's weight grows a lot. It more than triples. We have drastic physical changes happening. We can see a lot more details that we couldn't see before. The fetus can open its eyes during the last few months. And in the last month, the fetus usually, under normal circumstances, moves into the head down position, which is usually how babies are born. So the head is basically pushing against the cervix in preparation for birth. And in childbirth, so first of all, the cervix, which is this part, has to dilate, so it has to increase in size to at least 2.5 inches. Remember that is a positive feedback mechanism, so you may want to think about the feedback. Remember, it involved oxytocin and contractions and dilation. We also have to have dilation, so the uterus is going to start contracting, which means it's going to start pushing a little bit, and that pushing is going to push the head of the baby against the cervix. which is then going to send a signal to the brain to release more oxytocin, which is going to then increase contractions, increase dilation, which is going to push the baby even more. So remember, that's that positive feedback loop, until eventually very strong uterine contractions deliver the baby. The placenta gets cut, and then the umbilical cord, gets cut, and then the placenta gets delivered after the baby is delivered. And that, in brief, is the process of fertilization and childbirth. All right, if you have any questions, let me know.